The throne room of the Valthene Empire stretched before her like a cathedral of ice and starlight. Queen Thera stood at its center, her crystalline scales catching the pale luminescence of twin moons that hung beyond the viewport. She had ruled for 3 centuries, guided her people through wars and famines, expanded their territory across 12 systems. Yet now, as the council of matrons surrounded her in a semicircle of judgment, none of that mattered. "You are no longer fit to lead," Elder Mora declared, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Your decisions have grown soft. You spare conquered worlds when we should harvest them. You negotiate when we should dominate." Thera's forearms remained folded across her chest, her expression carved from stone. She had expected this. The old ways died hard among her people, and she had committed the ultimate sin. She had chosen mercy over conquest. "I have brought prosperity," Thera said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her secondary hearts. "You have brought weakness," another matron spat. "You are unfit to bear the crown. The Valthene do not compromise. We conquer." The vote was swift and unanimous. 300 years of service erased in moments. They stripped her of her title, her guards, her ships. They gave her a single shuttle and cast her out into the void between stars, a queen without a kingdom, an immortal with nothing but time. She drifted for weeks, her shuttle's supplies dwindling, her pride refusing to let her call for help from those who had betrayed her. Better to die in the darkness than crawl back to those who saw compassion as corruption. Then the sensors detected it, a small blue planet on the edge of an unremarkable system. The locals called it Earth. The shuttle crashed in a forest of towering pines, far from civilization. Thera emerged from the wreckage, wounded and exhausted. Her regeneration would heal the injuries, but it would take time. She needed shelter, water, and above all, she needed to remain hidden. Humanity was not ready for first contact, and the Valthene would not hesitate to destroy this world if they knew she had found refuge here. She had been on Earth for 3 days when he found her. Tom was a ranger, one of the humans who watched over these wild places. He had investigated the crash site, expecting debris from a satellite, perhaps a meteor. Instead, he found a being from another world, collapsed beneath a fallen log, her breathing shallow. He should have run, should have called the authorities. Instead, he built a fire and brought her water, watching as those strange eyes opened and fixed on him with a mixture of wariness and wonder. "Please," Thera whispered in a language he could not understand, but her meaning was clear. "Help me." Tom's cabin became her sanctuary. He tended her wounds with the supplies he had, brought her food, learned to communicate through gestures and drawings. She was brilliant, learning his language in days, teaching him the basics of hers in return. He learned her name, her story, the weight of centuries that pressed down on her shoulders. "Why help me?" she asked one evening as they sat by the fire, her scales reflecting the dancing flames. "I am nothing to you. A stranger. An alien." Tom looked at her, this being who had lived longer than his entire civilization, who had commanded fleets and ruled worlds. "Because you needed help," he said simply. "And because I don't think you're nothing. I think you're someone who tried to do the right thing and got punished for it." Months passed. Spring turned to summer, and Thera found herself healing in ways that had nothing to do with flesh and bone. Tom taught her about Earth, about humanity's struggles and triumphs, their art and music, their capacity for both cruelty and kindness. She taught him about the stars, about civilizations that rose and fell, about the loneliness of immortality. She told him about the Valthene philosophy, strength through dominance, survival through conquest. She told him how she had begun to question it after witnessing a primitive species sacrifice their own lives to save their young during a raid. How that spark of doubt had grown into a fire that consumed her certainty. We are taught that compassion is weakness, Thera said one night, her voice soft. "But watching you, watching humans, I wonder if perhaps it is the opposite. You are fragile, short-lived, yet you care for strangers. You fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. There is strength in that." Tom reached out, hesitated, then placed his hand over one of hers. She had 4 arms to his 2, scales to his skin, eyes that saw in spectrums he could not imagine. Yet his touch was warm, and it did not recoil from what she was. "You're not weak," he said. "You stood up for what you believed in, even when everyone else told you that you were wrong. That takes more courage than any conquest." Something shifted between them then, invisible but undeniable. She had lived for 3 centuries and never felt this, the quickening of her hearts, the vulnerability of letting someone see past the crown and titles to the person beneath. Tom felt it too, this impossible connection. He had spent years alone in these woods, content with solitude. Now he could not imagine the cabin without her, could not picture returning to his patrols without her voice, asking questions about every plant and animal they encountered. But happiness, as Thera had learned long ago, was a fleeting thing in an uncaring universe. The Valfine fleet found her in autumn. They came at dawn, their ships blotting out the sun. The Council had deemed her existence an insult, her survival a threat to their ideology. They would erase her from history, and they would destroy any world that harbored her. Thera stood before Tom's cabin, her 4 arms spread wide, placing herself between the descending warriors and the man she had come to love. "I will go with you," she called out in her native tongue. "Spare this planet. Spare him. There is no mercy for traitors," came the reply, "and none for those who shelter them." Tom stepped up beside her, rifle in hand. It was a pathetic weapon compared to their technology, but he held it steady. "She's not going anywhere," he said. "Tom, no," Thera whispered. "You cannot win this fight. Please, save yourself. I'm not leaving you." The warriors advanced, weapons charged. Thera's mind raced. She was one against many, weakened from months without proper sustenance for her species. She could not protect him. She could not save this planet. But she could make a choice. Her voice, when it came, was not the voice of an exile. It was the voice of a queen. "I am Thera, sovereign of the Valfine Empire, guardian of 12 systems, bearer of the crystal crown. I ruled you for 3 centuries. I led you to victory in the Kelnar Wars. I expanded our borders beyond what any ruler before me achieved. And I say this, if you strike at this human, if you harm this world, you will have to go through me. Not as an exile, not as a traitor, as your queen." The warriors hesitated. Ancient protocols warred with current commands. She had been their leader for so long, her authority etched into their very culture. In that moment of hesitation, Tom did something that would change everything. He lowered his rifle and stepped forward, standing beside Thera, not as a defender, but as an equal. "She told me about your people," he said, his voice carrying across the clearing, "about strength and conquest. But I've seen her true strength these past months. The strength to question, to change, to choose compassion over cruelty. If that makes her weak in your eyes, then maybe you need to redefine what strength means." One of the warriors, younger than the others, lowered her weapon. Then another. The paradigm was cracking. "Enough!" Elder Mora's voice crackled over the communication system. She had come personally, her ship hanging like a judgment in the sky. "Return to formation. The traitor will be eliminated." But the warriors did not move. They stood frozen between old loyalties and new questions. Mora descended then, her ancient form still imposing despite the weight of years. She looked at Thera, at Tom, at the warriors who would not obey. "You have corrupted them," she hissed. "No," Thera said quietly. I have shown them another way, as this human showed me. He is nothing, insignificant, short-lived. He is brave, compassionate, everything we could be if we chose to be. Mora raised her weapon, aimed it at Tom's chest. Then watch him die for your weakness. Thera moved faster than thought, placing herself in the path of the blast. The energy tore through her, dropping her to the ground. Tom caught her, his hands desperate on her scales, his voice breaking as he called her name. The clearing erupted in chaos. Warriors turned on their elder, refusing to follow orders. The old regime was collapsing, and in its place, something new was being born. Mora fled to her ship, but the other vessels did not follow. They remained, and their commanders approached, not with weapons, but with questions. Tom held Thera as she regenerated, her bodies slowly knitting themselves back together. "Don't you dare leave me," he whispered. Her eyes opened, focusing on his face. "Never," she promised. The Valfiend did not leave Earth that day, but they did not conquer it either. Instead, they negotiated, learned, questioned everything they had believed. Thera became their leader once more, not through force, but through choice. And beside her, teaching her people about humanity's strange and wonderful capacity for growth, stood Tom. Two species, meeting in the darkness between stars, finding light in the most unexpected place. In each other.